You're telling me you had no
Mr.
idea
Thornton?
this was happening?
Rosa's voice
Marcus, tell me
cracked as
it's
she
a
spoke,
sister.
her accent thicker in her fear. I'm so sorry. I'll clean it up right away. Please, I need this job. Sofia's father, he died 2 years ago, and But Marcus raised his hand, silencing her, his eyes still fixed on the chalk drawing that had cracked open a vault in his heart he'd sealed shut the day they lowered his mother into a pauper's grave because he couldn't afford better. Sofia had moved back to her drawing, adding small details, stars around the angel wings that caught the light from the windows and seemed to shimmer. How old is she? Marcus asked, his voice strange and hollow. 7, sir. 7 last month. Rosa pulled her daughter closer, protective instinct overriding her fear. She doesn't usually come here. The daycare was closed and her regular babysitter. Does she draw often? Every day. On everything. Paper when we can afford it, sidewalks when we can't. She sees things that aren't there and makes them real. Rosa's voice carried a mixture of pride and worry, the tone of a mother who recognizes her child's gift but knows the world rarely rewards such talents in people like them. Marcus walked slowly around the drawing, viewing it from different angles, watching how the image shifted and changed, how Sofia had created something three-dimensional on a flat surface using only chalk and instinct. It was sophisticated in a way that spoke of genuine talent, not just childhood whimsy. "What's your name?" he asked the child directly. "Sofia Elena Valdez," she announced proudly. "I'm named after my grandma who was an artist in Mexico, but she had to stop to raise her children." She looked up at him with those penetrating brown eyes. "My mommy says I have her gift, but gifts don't pay rent." The innocent repetition of adult worries in a child's voice hit Marcus like a physical blow. The security guards were still watching, the receptionist had called for janitorial supplies to clean up the chalk, and 2 junior executives had paused by the elevator to witness what they assumed would be a termination. Marcus Thornton was known for his swift, merciless decisions, for never showing weakness or sentiment. But standing there, looking at Rosa's terrified face and Sofia's curious one, he felt the weight of every cruel dismissal he'd ordered, every family he'd thoughtlessly disrupted in his climb to power. The chalk drawing at his feet seemed to pulse with life, those upturned hands asking for something he'd forgotten how to give. Marcus knelt down, his expensive suit be damned, and really looked at what Sofia had created. The child had used advanced techniques without knowing their names, creating depth through overlapping lines and suggesting movement through careful smudging. "Who taught you to do this?" he asked, his voice softer than anyone in the lobby had ever heard it. "Nobody," Sofia replied, adding another star to her constellation. "I just see things that want to be seen." She glanced at her mother's hands, red and swollen from chemicals. "Mommy's hands tell stories. See this line here?" She traced a particularly deep crack in Rosa's palm. "That's from when she saved me from falling down the stairs. And this one is from working extra shifts to buy my school supplies." Rosa tried to hide her hands behind her back, embarrassed by their roughness, but Sofia grabbed them and pulled them forward. "Don't hide them, Mommy. They're proof of love." The simplicity of the child's wisdom seemed to echo in the vast lobby, bouncing off marble and glass until even the security guards found themselves blinking rapidly. Marcus's phone buzzed with a reminder about his 2 o'clock meeting with Japanese investors, a deal worth $80 million that required his immediate attention. He ignored it. "Rosa, how long have you worked here?" 15 years, Mr. Thornton. I started when the building first opened." Her voice was steady now, resigned to whatever came next. "I've never missed a day except when Sofia was born." 15 years, Marcus repeated, calculating quickly. "That means you've been here longer than any of my executives. You've outlasted 3 CEOs, 2 hostile takeovers, and a recession." He stood up, his knees protesting. "And in all that time, has anyone ever asked you what you think about this building? About the company?" Rosa's confusion was evident. "Sir? It's a simple question. You see everything, hear everything. The cleaning staff always does. You probably know more about the real operations of this company than half my board of directors." Sofia had finished her drawing now and was sitting back on her heels, admiring her work. "It's done," she announced. "Now it just needs to be protected so it doesn't disappear." "Protected?" Marcus murmured, the word triggering another memory. His mother had said the same thing about his chalk drawings, how they needed to be protected, preserved, but there was no way to protect chalk on marble, just as there had been no way to protect his mother from the cancer that ate her lungs, no way to protect his childhood dreams from the grinding reality of poverty. "Mr. Thornton," Rosa ventured carefully, "if you'll allow me to get my supplies, I can clean this up in 5 minutes. It won't leave any permanent marks." "Permanent marks," Marcus repeated, looking at the drawing, at Sofia's proud face, at Rosa's work-worn hands. Everything leaves permanent marks, Mrs. Valdez. Everything. He pulled out his phone, not to call security but to call his personal assistant. Patricia? Cancel my 2 o'clock. And my 3. Actually, clear the rest of my afternoon. The lobby fell into stunned silence. Marcus Thornton never canceled meetings, especially not with international investors. Patricia's voice squeaked through the phone with protests about contracts and deadlines, but Marcus ended the call without responding. He looked at Sofia, who was now carefully gathering her chalk pieces into a small plastic bag decorated with cartoon characters. Sofia, would you like to show me more of your drawings? The child's face lit up. I have a whole notebook, but it's at home. And some on the walls, but Mommy made me promise only to draw on the walls in my room, not the living room because we're renters and Mr. Peterson gets angry about marks on the walls and… Sofia, Rosa interrupted gently, Mr. Thornton is a busy man. Not today, Marcus said, surprising himself with the conviction in his voice. Today I have time. He looked at the gathering crowd of employees, all pretending to work while obviously eavesdropping. Don't you all have somewhere to be? They scattered like startled birds, leaving only Marcus, Rosa, Sofia, and the chalk angel on the floor. The afternoon sun had shifted, and now the drawing seemed to glow, the wings appearing to flutter in the changing light. Marcus took out his phone again, this time to take a photo, but the image on the screen couldn't capture what the eye could see, couldn't convey the way the drawing seemed alive, seemed to breathe. The marble floors of the Meridian Tower gleamed like mirrors under the afternoon sun streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows, but Marcus Thornton didn't notice the 7-year-old girl kneeling near the executive elevator until his Italian leather shoe nearly stepped on her tiny fingers. She was drawing something with a piece of blue chalk, her dark curls falling over her face like a curtain, completely absorbed in her work. The billionaire's face twisted with disgust as he saw the chalk dust spreading across his $40,000 per square foot marble, and when he noticed the janitor's cart parked nearby, his anger found its target. Is this your brat? He barked at Rosa Valdez, who was polishing the brass fixtures near the reception desk, her weathered hands moving in practice circles that spoke of 20 years cleaning these same halls. Rosa's heart lurched as she saw her daughter Sofia on the floor, the child who wasn't supposed to be here at all but whose babysitter had canceled last minute, forcing Rosa to bring her to work on this crucial Friday when Marcus Thornton himself was in the building. She rushed over, her knee creaking from years of scrubbing floors, reaching for Sofia's small shoulder, but the little girl was so focused on her drawing that she didn't even look up. Marcus Thornton's voice cut through the lobby like a blade. This is a Fortune 500 headquarters, not a daycare for the help's offspring. The word, help, dripped from his tongue like something foul he needed to spit out. Security should have never let her pass the door. If you're moved by stories of unexpected human connection and the power of innocent wisdom, hit that like button and subscribe to Acts of Depth, where we share tales that remind us what truly matters in life. Sofia finally looked up then, her enormous brown eyes meeting Marcus Thornton's steel-gray ones without a hint of fear, which only infuriated him more because no one, absolutely no one, looked at him without showing proper deference. I'm making something beautiful, she said simply, her voice carrying the musical accent of her mother's Mexican heritage mixed with pure American confidence. Want to see? Marcus Thornton had built his empire by crushing anyone who dared to waste his time, and here was this janitor's daughter, covered in chalk dust, treating him like he was just another person passing by instead of the man whose signature could end her mother's employment with a single stroke of his Mont Blanc pen. Beautiful? He laughed, but it was the kind of laugh that made the security guard shift nervously and the receptionist pretend to be very busy with her computer screen. You're defacing private property worth more than your mother will earn in a lifetime. He pulled out his phone, ready to call building management, ready to have Rosa Valdez escorted out with her final paycheck, ready to make an example that would remind every employee in the building of their place in the hierarchy he'd spent 40 years climbing. Rosa's hands trembled as she tried to pull Sofia up, whispering rapid Spanish pleas for her to gather her chalk and come away, but Sofia shook her head with the stubborn certainty that only children possess when they know something adults have forgotten. But I'm not done yet, she protested, pointing at her drawing. Look, it's almost finished. The chalk creation spread across nearly 6 feet of marble, swirls of blue and white creating something Marcus couldn't quite make out from his standing position, his height and angle preventing him from seeing what had captivated this child so completely that she'd risk her mother's job to complete it. The lobby had gone silent except for the whisper of the air conditioning and the distant ding of elevators, everyone watching this collision between the most powerful man in the building and its smallest, most powerless visitor. Marcus Thornton's jaw clenched as he prepared to deliver the words that would destroy Rosa Valdez's carefully built life, the life she'd constructed with sacrifice and determination after fleeing violence in Juarez 15 years ago. He'd fired executives for smaller infractions than allowing their personal lives to interfere with the pristine operation of his company. This janitor and her chalk-wielding daughter were about to learn what happened when you forgot your place in Marcus Thornton's perfectly ordered world. But as he opened his mouth to pronounce their fate, Sofia did something unexpected. She stood up, chalk still in her small hand, and walked around her drawing to stand beside him, tugging gently on his suit jacket with her dusty fingers, leaving small blue fingerprints on the $10,000 fabric. "You have to see it from here," she said, pulling him to a specific spot. "It only works if you stand right here." And Marcus Thornton, the man who hadn't been told what to do by anyone in 20 years, found himself looking down at the marble floor from this new angle, and what he saw there made the words die in his throat. The drawing wasn't just random swirls of chalk. From this precise angle, the blue and white lines formed the unmistakable image of hands, weathered working hands reaching upward, and above them, barely visible unless you knew to look for it, the outline of angel wings emerging from the marble's natural veining, as if Sofia had found something already living in the stone and simply brought it to light. Marcus stood frozen, his mind racing back 35 years to another Friday afternoon, another marble floor, another pair of small hands covered in chalk dust. His own hands when he was 8 years old, drawing on the floor of St. Catherine's Hospital where his mother worked as a cleaner, where she brought him when she couldn't afford a babysitter, where she was fired for allowing him to deface the lobby while she cleaned operating rooms at $2 an hour. "My mommy's hands," Sofia said quietly, unaware of the earthquake happening inside Marcus Thornton's chest. "She says they're not pretty, but I think they're beautiful because they take care of everything." The little girl traced the outline with her finger, careful not to smudge her work. "And see here? That's her guardian angel watching over her while she works at night." Rosa had gone pale, her hand pressed to her mouth, certain that her daughter's innocent art had just cost them everything, but she didn't know that Marcus was no longer seeing Sofia's drawing but his own mother's hands, scarred from industrial cleaning chemicals, reaching up from his memory like ghosts. The resemblance was more than coincidental. The way Sofia had used the marble's natural patterns, incorporating them into her design instead of covering them, was exactly what Marcus had done all those years ago, before his artistic ambitions were crushed by necessity, before his mother's death from lung cancer caused by decades of inhaling cleaning fumes drove him to claw his way to the top of the corporate world with a fury that left no room for beauty or softness. He built Meridian Enterprises to never be powerless again, to never watch someone he loved destroyed by poverty, and somewhere along the way he'd become the very type of person who had destroyed his mother's spirit all those years ago. "It never looks right in pictures," Sofia said knowingly. "Real things don't always fit in boxes." Marcus made a decision that would have seemed insane to him just an hour ago. "Rosa, I want to commission your daughter to create something for this building. A permanent installation." Rosa's legs nearly gave out and she gripped her cleaning cart for support. "I don't understand. I want Sofia to recreate this drawing or something like it in the children's wing of the Thornton Foundation office on the 3rd floor. We run programs there for underprivileged youth, but the walls are blank, lifeless. I never thought about it before, but now." He gestured at the chalk angel. "Now I realize we've been teaching these kids to succeed without teaching them to see beauty." Sofia jumped up and down, chalk dust flying from her clothes like fairy dust. "Really? My own wall to draw on? A real wall that won't get erased?" "Not chalk," Marcus clarified. "Real materials. Paint, whatever you need. I'll have my arts acquisition team work with you." He caught Rosa's expression. "Paid, of course. Fair market value for commissioned art." Rosa's hand went to her heart. "Mr. Thornton, she's 7 years old." "Mozart was composing at 5, Marcus replied. "Picasso completed his first painting at 9. Age doesn't determine talent, and your daughter has something genuine." He looked at Sofia, who was now skipping around her chalk drawing, careful not to smudge it. "But there's a condition." Rosa's face fell. There was always a condition with powerful men. "She continues her regular education. Art lessons too with proper teachers. The foundation will cover all expenses." Marcus pulled out his business card, then thought better of it and wrote his personal cell number on the back. "And Rosa, you're being promoted. I need someone to oversee the new community art program we're launching. Someone who understands what it's like to have talent but no opportunity. But I'm just a janitor, Rosa protested. I don't know anything about running programs. You've kept this building spotless for 15 years while raising a child alone, managing a budget that I'm guessing barely covers basic expenses, and somehow you've nurtured an artist in the process. That's more qualification than most of my MBAs have. Marcus's voice carried an edge of self-mockery. Besides, you said it yourself. Gifts don't pay rent. It's time that changed. Sofia had stopped skipping and was staring at Marcus with those penetrating eyes. Why are you being nice now? You were mean before. The directness of children. Marcus crouched down again, meeting her at eye level. Because your drawing reminded me of someone I used to be, someone I forgot. My mother was like your mother. She cleaned buildings like this one. She had hands like your mother's hands. His voice caught slightly. She died when I was 18 and I promised myself I'd never be powerless again. But somewhere along the way I became the kind of person who would have hurt her. That's sad, Sofia said simply. She reached into her chalk bag and pulled out a piece of yellow chalk. Here. Yellow is for new beginnings. You can help me draw something new. Marcus took the chalk, its weight insignificant in his palm but somehow heavier than any contract he'd ever signed. I don't remember how. It's easy, Sofia assured him. You just start with one line and see where it goes. And so Marcus Thornton, billionaire CEO, found himself on his hands and knees on the marble floor of his own building, drawing with chalk beside a 7-year-old girl while her mother watched in disbelief. He started with a simple line, then another, and slowly, clumsily, he began to create something that might have been a sun or might have been a flower, he wasn't sure. Sofia guided him, not with instructions but with encouragement, adding her own touches that transformed his awkward attempts into something cohesive. See, she said. You're not lost. You just forgot the way. Employees returning from lunch stopped and stared at the sight of their fearsome boss drawing on the floor with chalk, his suit ruined, his face relaxed in a way they'd never seen. Some took discreet photos, not for mockery but because they were witnessing something they knew was historic, a moment when the Iron Man of Meridian Tower remembered he was human. The afternoon sun continued its journey across the sky, and the chalk drawings multiplied across the marble, Sofia and Marcus creating a garden of possibilities while Rosa stood guard, protecting this impossible moment from the logical world that would soon reassert itself. But for now, in this bright lobby with its gleaming floors and soaring windows, a little girl with chalk-stained fingers was teaching a billionaire how to see angels in the marble, how to find beauty in working hands, how to remember that the most permanent marks we leave are not in stone or contracts but in the hearts we choose to open or close. 3 months later, the dedication ceremony for the Sofia Valdez Community Art Space drew a crowd that spilled out of the Thornton Foundation offices and into the hallway. The wall that Sofia had painted wasn't just a mural, it was a living story that seemed to move as you walked past it, showing working hands transforming into birds, into clouds, into angels, all interconnected in a symphony of color that made hardened executives stop and stare. Sofia stood in a new dress that Rosa had bought with her first paycheck as Director of Community Arts Outreach, her chalk-stained fingers now clean but still constantly moving, sketching invisible drawings in the air. Marcus gave a speech that no one expected, abandoning his prepared remarks to talk about his mother, Elena Thornton, who had died believing her son would make something of himself but never lived to see it happen. She would have loved Sofia's art, he said, his voice carrying across the packed room. She would have understood that success without beauty is just another form of poverty. He announced that the foundation would be funding art programs in 50 schools across the city, all in neighborhoods where children like Sofia might be drawing on sidewalks with borrowed chalk, their talents invisible to a world that only measured worth in dollars. Rosa had transformed too, her natural intelligence and years of careful observation making her unexpectedly brilliant at identifying children who needed what the program offered. She still arrived at work early, but now she came in through the front door, her hands no longer hidden but extended in greeting to the families who brought their children to the art space. She'd hired 2 of her former colleagues from the cleaning staff to help run the programs, women who understood what it meant to have dreams deferred but not destroyed. The revelation that changed everything came during the dedication, when a New York Times art critic who'd been invited as a courtesy took one look at Sofia's wall and declared it the most important piece of outsider art he'd seen in a decade. Within a week, galleries were calling, collectors were offering astronomical sums, and Sofia's story had gone viral. But Marcus, acting as her protective patron, turned them all down. She's 7, he reminded them. Let her be 7. The art world will still be there when she's ready for it. Sofia, for her part, seemed unaffected by the attention. She still drew every day but now she had proper materials, teachers who nurtured her gift without trying to contain it, and walls that welcomed her vision instead of rejecting it. She'd made friends in the art program, other children who saw the world differently, and together they were creating something that made the adults around them remember what it felt like to believe in magic. The chalk drawing on the lobby floor had been preserved under a special coating, a technique Marcus had paid a fortune to develop, and it became something of a pilgrimage site for employees. They would stop on bad days, on good days, on ordinary days that needed a touch of wonder, and look at those hands reaching upward, at those wings emerging from marble, at the stars a 7-year-old had scattered across expensive stone without apology or permission. Security guards had standing orders to never obstruct the view, to let anyone who needed to see it stand there as long as they wanted. Marcus kept the yellow chalk Sofia had given him in his desk drawer, pulling it out during difficult decisions to remind himself that every line he drew in business affected real people with real hands and real dreams. He'd started a tradition of walking through the building at night, talking to the cleaning staff, learning their names and their stories. He discovered that Rosa had been right. They saw everything, knew everything, and their insights often cut through problems his executives had been circling for months. On the first anniversary of that Friday afternoon when Sofia drew her angel on the marble floor, Marcus held a celebration that brought together everyone whose lives had been touched by the moment. The lobby was filled with children's art, the walls covered with drawings of hands and wings and stars. Sofia, now 8 and slightly taller but still irrepressibly herself, stood with her mother and Marcus, looking at the preserved chalk drawing that had started it all. "Do you remember what you were thinking when you drew this?" Marcus asked her. Sofia nodded. "I was thinking about how Mommy's hands were tired, and I wanted to draw something that would make her feel like she could fly." She looked up at him with those same penetrating brown eyes. "Did it work?" Marcus looked at Rosa, who was radiant in her new role, her hands still bearing the scars of her previous life but no longer hidden, no longer ashamed. He thought about his own transformation, the walls he'd broken down, the connections he'd rebuilt, the part of himself he'd recovered from beneath 40 years of armor. "Yes," he said simply. "It worked." As the celebration continued around them, Sofia pulled out a new piece of chalk, purple this time, and knelt by the preserved drawing. Before anyone could stop her, she added one small detail to the edge of the protected area, a tiny heart with the initials ET inside it. "For your mom," she explained to Marcus. "So she knows she's part of the story too." Marcus found himself on his knees beside her once again, not caring about his suit, not caring about appearances, just feeling the weight of grace that comes when someone sees your broken pieces and makes art from them anyway. The afternoon sun slanted through the windows, lighting up the chalk dust in the air like stars, and for a moment, just a moment, everyone in that lobby could see the angels Sofia had always known were there, waiting in the marble, waiting in the worn hands of workers, waiting in the hearts of those brave enough to look. That's the truth about angels and art and transformation. They don't announce themselves with trumpets or ceremonies. They arrive in the small hands of children carrying chalk, in the patient love of mothers who clean office buildings while nurturing dreams, in the moments when powerful people remember they were once powerless and choose to lift others up instead of stepping on them. The Meridian Tower still gleams in the afternoon sun, but now it gleams differently, marked forever by chalk dust and wonder, by the day a 7-year-old girl showed a billionaire that the most valuable things can't be bought or sold, only drawn into existence by those who still believe in magic. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you of the angels waiting to be discovered in your own life, take a moment to share it with someone who needs to remember that beauty exists in unexpected places. Subscribe to Acts of Depth for more stories that reveal the extraordinary in the ordinary, and remember, sometimes the smallest hands draw the biggest truths, and sometimes the most powerful transformations begin with nothing more than chalk on marble and the courage to see what's really there.